All right, folks, let's get this circus under control here. And so I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone. It's about 1:33 or so. So for the record, that's Jim Godfrey, Chair. And so let me start off by reading. First of all, let me start off by saying welcome to everyone. And welcome Carlos back. He warned us he was coming back one way or the other. So he's here now as part of the CTAB. So welcome back, Carlos. Glad to have you. All kidding aside, you provide a lot of great input. So
You're kidding? You're glad to have me?
yeah. Well, publicly, yes, I'm on speaker. So yeah. No, but anyway, welcome back. Thank everybody for their time and being here. So let me just start off by reading the purpose statement. The primary objective of the CAC is to ensure the capital maintenance and public transportation projects and programs approved by the PPRTA voters at the November 2nd, 2004, November 6th, 2012, and November 7th, 2017, and November 8th, 22 ballot measures are accomplished with PPRTA funds. This committee reports to the board of directors. So, all right. So we have a quorum. So all alternates that are here can vote, including myself. And so first item would be approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented or changed? Tony, so move.
Larry.
Okay, thank you. So motion and made, all those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries agenda. Thank you. Item number 3, public comment for items not on the agenda. Anyone in the audience have any public comments for all items not on the agenda? Okay, not seeing anybody online have any comments for items not on the agenda. Don't see any hands raised or anything, so we'll move on. I guess I should ask any committee members. I didn't do that. None. Okay. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes of the March 1st meeting? Tony, so move. Thank you.
Larry Tobias, second.
Larry Tobias, second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody online oppose? Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you. Financial reports. Lisa.
Lisa Corey, the finance manager for PPRTA. The sales and use tax I'm reporting is for the month of January. So we are above the monthly budget by $619,264 or 6%. So hopefully we can continue with that trajectory of at least meeting budget or exceeding it. So from last year, we're only up 1.8% from January of 2022. And the actual amount of that is $191,935. Did anyone have any questions?
And we just barely hit the black for the year last year, right? We weren't far over, right?
Right. I think it was 1/10% over.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Good budget projections. Tony?
Do we have any projections on what's happening with the fact that inflation has been so high would make me believe that the numbers would actually be up as much as inflation. So do we have any idea what's going on there?
Right. It does seem like it is a little bit lower than the inflation. So I think the average from one January to the next January would have been about 2.2%, and we're only at 1.8. So we are slightly lower if we bring those numbers up to inflation. So.
Well, the good news is we're above projection, so
Yeah.
it's much better than be sitting here deciding how we're going to solve the problem being below projection. So I'd rather have that kind of thing. So
It's a good start to the year.
a good start for the year. Exactly. Well, thank you, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa? Anybody online? Any questions? Okay. Not seeing any. Thank you. All right. Item 6, capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. Gail, you want to start off and do the city? Welcome, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, Mr. Chair, the city is pleased to present 9 contracts for the CAC's consideration today. The first contract is for a modified traffic circle at the intersection, the 7th Street and Cara Street intersection, with just a little bit south of our location here. The city had received several complaints with some heavy truck traffic going through that neighborhood area. And the initial request had actually been to close that intersection, and we really worked with all the stakeholders in the area to institute this modified roundabout or traffic circle instead. So the plan has been finalized. We put it out to bid. The city received 6 bids. Pyramid Construction was the lowest bidder in the amount of $167,798.35. I will mention there is a map for this particular project location in your packet if you're interested in seeing that.
Yeah, that looks like an interesting design to definitely funnel and constrict large vehicles for movement through that.
Yeah.
And it's those, thanks for providing that map.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Excuse me, you just said that the contract was awarded for $167,000, but on the paperwork here, it says 137.
If I must have misspoke, if I said 167, it is 137,000.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that clarification. Apologize for that. We've got a handful of maintenance contracts I'm going to go through. The first one is for the PPRTA crack sealing program. The first one we went through an RFP process for this maintenance activity. We received 3 respondents. We're recommending an award to 2 vendors, Maxwell Products and Craftco, in the amount of $300,000 each for a total expenditure of $600,000. Okay, next contract is for PPRTA pre-mix concrete. We initially went out through an RFP process where we received 0 respondents. So in lieu of that, we actually went out and requested quotes from 3 vendors. And we felt like the quotes we got back were reasonable. We would like to issue contracts in the value of $500,000 to Smyrna. Thank you. I'm having a hard time talking today. Smyrna, Ready Mix, Wholesome, and Pete and Lean for these products.
Mr. Chair, I just want to, Mr. Robertson has his hand raised.
Oh, sorry. Who did? Oh, Richard? Is that Richard?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Gail, I have reviewed the going through the city contracts, and basically I think as usual they're very good. You do a good process. However, starting with this one, and for some number of similar contracts, I'm finding that you're putting out for bid, and I'm certain, and you get the you award to the low bidder, but then you add others in there. Now, take this one as an example and please explain why you're issuing it to 3 companies instead of the low bidder, only the low bidder, and why you're doing that on some others that you're going to go through.
Okay, I think I can answer that for you, Mr. Richardson. If I missed something, please ask me something, an add-on question at the end, but we have different kinds of contracts. The first one that I talked about that went to the lowest bidder for 7th and Katara's actually had design plans. It was a set and distinct project with distinct objectives and line items that the contractor could bid on. And that's going to be applied only for that one contract. This contract and some of these others we're going to be talking about are on-call either materials or services that are going to be provided. And we look to have typically like to have more than one contractor available to provide those services or materials if that's applicable. In this case, we do have quotes, and when we establish these quotes, we get line item pricing that we can use on an on-call basis as needed. So for example, I just went through the crack seal And Brian, I think Brian Wilson is on from our operations and maintenance staff as well, if he wants to add on to this, but if he were to say, I've got this contract for $300,000 with Maxwell and I've got another one with Craftco, he could say, okay, Craftco, I want you to take this $300,000 in the south side of the city of Maxwell and then take the $300,000 on the north side of the city. Or you can come say, I want you guys to do X, Y, and Z based on your unit prices at these locations and divide the work between those contractors. If it makes sense, but it's better for us to have multiple options with optioneers with those unit prices established to get on-call work that's needed. And Brian, I don't know if you want to supplement with what I said.
Yeah, the only thing I'd supplement is that the volume of work that we have to do, no one contractor could provide the level of services we need.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I was thinking that through my head, but did not mention that. Does that answer your questions?
Basically, and I appreciate Brian's comment as well, because that can be the case and in any number of situations when you're talking about this sort of a project. And I appreciate both, and it does answer my question.
Great, thank you.
Thank you,
All
Richard.
right, Mr. Chair, I'll continue on with
Go ahead.
contract number 4. It's for PPRTA on-call ADA concrete services. If you recall, the PPRTA CAC board initially they looked at the contractors in December 22. We've started issuing task orders. I'm bringing contracts number 4 and 5 are additional contract allocations for those vendors. Contract number 4 is for HCD in the amount of $1,214,019.54. Contract number 5 is very similar. Contract number 5 is similar, but it's with concrete experts for $488,000. Questions of those two?
Now, Gail,
Yes.
I would assume that this is in areas not being worked on by 2C.
That is correct. This is specific for areas that are being worked on by PPRTA or areas where it's not necessarily doing pavement resurfacing. It's just pure concrete work.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that to make sure that there was a distinction between.
It absolutely is. We use 2C money when we're doing concrete work adjacent to 2C resurfacing efforts. Contract 6 and 7 are also similar. They are for crack seal programs. The city had established on-call contracts with both these vendors. Contract number 6 is for A1 chip seal. This will be the 3rd option year, and we'll be adding $750,000 for their on-call efforts to support operations and maintenance. And contract number 7 is very similar. But this is option year number 2 for Seal Coat Solutions, and we're also recommending a contract with them for $750,000. Contract number 8 is for the PPRTA A-list projects, the 8th Street Motorway, Motor City Drive to Fountain Creek improvements. As the city has gone through the alternative analysis process with that, Utilities has done a condition assessment of their lines, and one of their 24-inch water transmission lines in 8th Street is in poor condition. So they want to come in and do a project in conjunction with ours. It's actually a pretty significant project and actually even extend beyond the limits of the PPRTA project. So Utilities is going to have a significant investment. To get them started, they need a design contract with Wilson and Company for the water line redesign in the amount of $502,000. $502,142. I will let you know that Colorado Springs Utilities will be covering the costs for this and the future work that are going to be added into our project. But because it is going to be still part of the PPRTA contract, wanted to bring that to your attention and also need your recommendation for approval. And our last contract for consideration today is for the Las Vegas Royer Railroad Crossing relocation. This is for some additional SUE and geotechnical work that became apparent as being needed. through the construction bid process. We've actually stopped the construction bid process. Going to be conducting this work and then putting that project back out to bid. This is one of two change orders. This one is specifically for the subcontractor Serve West, supporting our engineer of record and the amount of $152,824.50. So those are the 9 contracts the city has for presentations. Are there additional questions beyond?
Gail,
what's been
I got a
asked?
question on the Las Vegas Royer one. That project has been discussed and beaten around for 20 years.
Yes.
Seems like
Yes,
going
it
on.
has.
And we're now just doing survey of engineering and utilities work under it. I know that the railroad was a major portion of the coordination effort, but where are we in general terms with that project? Are we getting ready to put a crossing across somewhere?
Well,
Or
we are. So again, we had the project out for bid. It became apparent from the questions, there was a lot of concerns with the construction contractors because this subsurface utility investigation was not done. Now, let me back up a little. This contract originally started on the engineering side so long ago, around 2000, between 2011 and 2013. That's when the original contract started. The requirements for subsurface utility investigations now is different than it was done then. And there had been a decision made that did not go back and do a different SUE investigation previously. And then when we got the questions from the contractors, it became very apparent that we had a huge risk that we needed to mitigate. And it was important for us to take a step back and do the right thing here and make sure we got that correct and make sure we had the risk assignments correct for the utilities and also addressing those utility conflicts up front. So we're trying to wrap and get this done as quickly as possible so we can get that project back out to bid with less risk exposure.
get it done before the rules change again?
That's my goal. The other thing, we are in the end stages of working with both the railroads. They're requiring a 3-party construction and maintenance agreement. It's one of the things that is going to be required anyway. That is being delayed, or let's just say it's going much slower with one of the railroads than the other. So we actually needed additional time. So we felt like because that was already in the schedule, that it was also, it helped facilitate us it was probably the best thing for this project.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
So just a quick question for Gail, and I think I know the answer to this, and I know it's relatively picky, but for the 8th Street corridor, Motor City Drive, it talks about water line design and related construction services. That's actually construction inspection services, correct, and not the actual construction.
You said on 8th Street?
Yes. So the 8th Street corridor from Motor City Drive.
Yeah, it should be, it's engineering services during construction. That's how we refer to that.
Okay, yeah, because it just, it could be a little misleading just how it's written,
Okay.
related construction services.
I see your point. But it is the services that would be provided by Wilson and Company. not
Yeah,
by
for just for the
construction.
construction inspection and making
Yeah.
sure it conforms to the contract.
It's not construction inspection.
Okay,
It is engineering services during construction.
okay,
And those can be like submittal reviews, responding to RFIs, things like that. That's what we refer to as engineering services during construction. Thank you though for that.
Any other questions for Gail? Anybody online? Okay, not seeing one. Do I have, Gail, you done everything?
I do.
Do I have a motion to approve the city's contracts? Richard, thank you. A second? Tony? Okay, Rick, Tony. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Gail, I got a question. Not about any of those projects, but one in general that may involve one of those contractors. When Woodman and Academy Bridge was built, not long after it was completed, they came in and put a surface material about an inch or so thick across there. Do you know whether that's deteriorating pretty bad from about corporate drive there on the west side of that intersection, just past Hardee's up to about Sam's Club, that section that was treated. Is that in the works somewhere to be redone or looked at, whether it's 2C or here or what?
Yeah, I don't know about all that extent. I do know we're having some investigation going on that area over the bridge. If you could, I could give you a response at another time, but I know that we do recognize that there's challenges, particularly around that bridge.
Yeah, and it's concrete underneath. It's not like you can mill it down, you know, what I mean, it's the, yeah.
Well, there are actually some techniques that I think they're trying to get options on how to make sure we get that.
Okay.
A good wearing surface and make sure we have a waterproof membrane with that wearing surface if we can, to make sure there's not issues. But I've been focused on the bridge area, but I know where you're talking about.
Okay. All right.
Asphalt
Thank
is
you.
rough.
Thank you. Sorry to take up everybody's time, but all right. Item 6B, Josh, County.
Good afternoon, Josh Palmer, County Engineer. So there's actually two back-to-back items in the memo here. This is for 6B and 6C. This is a request for 6B to increase the county's portion of the, I'm going to say it correctly, even though it's not correct in the memo here, the Stapleton Briargate corridor study, to increase the county's portion of that project. And to accomplish that, utilize a line item transfer from the Highway 105 project in the amount of $16,040. This is just to complete the final phase of the corridor study, which is a compilation of public comments and finalizing the study for our consultant.
Okay. And I'm kind of hesitant to bring this up, but how does that impact that 105 project in terms of the funding issues we discussed last month and not being able to complete work out to 83?
It doesn't impact it. So we've done this in the past, where we've done line item transfers from other projects that are in the process, beginning, ongoing, or in some cases haven't even started yet, in order to complete an existing project. And then that $16,040 will be reconciled in the budget for 24,
Okay.
or if there's a mid-year amendment.
Okay, all right. Thank you for clarifying that. All right,
We have Richard online.
Richard, go ahead. You got to turn your mic on, Richard. There you go.
I am there. Thank you. I'm not used to not being there. I hope I can will be here by the next meeting. Josh, as you know, this particular project, this is a small amount and it doesn't bother me at all. But on Highway 105, I know that the segment, the last segment going, which is pretty long, going over to the intersection with 83. When is the, as I understand it, preliminary design is complete on the entire corridor, correct?
Incorrect. We have design for phases A and B. And I believe phase B goes to Martingale. So
Okay.
we don't have a design for the remaining portion of 105 from Martingale out to Highway 83.
You don't even have a preliminary design.
We have traffic, we have some traffic studies, and we have some conceptual, I wouldn't even call them plans, and they're not even that far along.
Okay.
We have a
Thank
general
you.
scope of work that we believe we need to accomplish. That's consistent with the ballot language from 2012. But as far as any sort of additional planning or design documents, we don't have any.
Okay. When do you expect to start the design on the segment that you just described?
Our goal is to to the construction phase of at least phase A, if not phase A and B, and that would help us have a better understanding of the cost for those two phases, and then we could then define what the scope of work is for the remaining portion. So we didn't want to assign a scope of work and start down the design process without a clear understanding of how much it's going to cost for the first two phases of the project. And though phase A and B are we're in the process of, I think we're in the process of contract, about ready to contract out for construction for phase A and very close for phase B as well, finalizing design for phase B. So once we have a good understanding of the total cost for those two phases, we can define or redefine what the scope is for the remaining portion without putting an undue burden on the remaining budget allocation for RTA2 for the region.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate the answer. I'll be continuing to try to check in, see how that is doing, because my fear is that all of a sudden it may be deemed necessary to defer the construction of that for quite a while. And I want that I've always considered that to be a major east-west connection that should go to at least 4 lanes in each direction. Well, not in each direction, a total of 4 lanes anyway. And I just hate to see that delayed. So anyway, but I do appreciate your answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further discussion on item 6B, the addition to funds for the Stapleton Briargate? Do I hear a motion to approve the county's request?
Larry Tobias, I move to approve the county's request as presented.
And David Zelenak, I'll second that motion.
All right, thank you, Dave. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, passes. All right, 6C.
So that was 6B and
that's
6C. Yeah.
Big 6B. and C
6B was
together.
the increase to the project cost, and 6C was the line item transfer.
Okay, so anybody want to change their vote by including the two? Is everybody okay with that? I'm seeing affirmative nods. Okay. Thank you. Sorry for the.
That's right. I was confused. I had to have Rick explain it to me as well. So.
All right. You want to finish the rest of yours, Josh?
Sure. Yeah. So we also have 6D would be some additional contracts. Six new contracts. The majority of these are for our annual maintenance program. So our 2023 asphalt overlay program contract to Martin Marietta in the amount of $10 million. 23 pavement preservation, which is a not to exceed contract amount of $3 million. Now we have that listed as TBD, and that's the same for our concrete replacement project as well. We are in the process of finalizing our contract to get a contractor on board for both preservation and our annual concrete. However, we, in an effort to not repeat mistakes of the past and get a late start on our annual work, we came before the commission today to propose not to exceed amounts for both of these contracts with the vendor to TBD. So we wouldn't have to wait to get through May and then into June before we can start the work. So the 23 pavement preservation is a not to exceed amount, $3 million. The line item transfer, as we previously mentioned, for $16,040 to Wilson and Company for the Stapleton Briargate corridor study. Our 23 annual concrete replacement project, like I mentioned, a not to exceed amount of $3,500,000 with the vendor TBD. A utility reimbursement agreement to Mountain View Electric, MVEA, in the amount of $624,501.14 for Highway 105. And this is relative to the requirement to have utilities within the limits of the work be relocated. And then property acquisition for both parcels 1 and 10 in the amount of $213,000 to Village Center Metro District, again on the Highway 105 project.
Any questions for Josh or Rick?
Josh, will you know the vendor names for the board meeting next week?
Yeah, we'll know them by the board meeting. Yeah,
Okay. Will you know those vendor names by tomorrow morning at 10?
we should. Yeah, we open bids today.
Then you could send me a revised cover sheet.
I
with
absolutely
vendor-
can.
Vendor name by 10 in the morning.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Josh, just got a question. So looking at the maps and the graphs, and thank you for providing those. Where Integrity Bank is. So it looks like the utilities are would be to the north of that bank in there, but is there, and it looks like there's maybe a roundabout. It coming out of Monument Academy, are they going to put an access road back there that joins that driveway into Integrity, or goes behind the bank, or what's the plan there? I know this is not part of your contract thing, but I was confused looking at the drawings, whether that's an easement for the utilities or whether that's actually a road that's going in there.
That would be that would be an easement.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, so there is a roundabout that's going right there, but there's already access back to the bank. So that access back there is not changing, not going away. It's just the intersection improvement of the
okay.
roundabout.
Yeah, I knew there was a drive into
Yeah.
the back of the bank, but I didn't know, looking at this drawing, whether they were going to create an exit coming out of Monument Academy that would bring them down to that light there. And so that just.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right, great. Any other questions for Josh in the county? Do I have a motion to approve the county's list of contracts?
I move, Mr. Chairman, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. Do I have a second? All right, Tony, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the county's contracts as presented, Dave? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. City of Manitou.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bill Grabenick, city engineer from Manitou Springs. I have before you here a contract for approval that will authorize a electrical contractor to install EV chargers at Hiawatha Gardens. Part of this is that we actually applied for a Charge Ahead Colorado grant over a year ago. We received the grant and we waited 60 weeks for CSU to provide a transformer. So now it's finally ready. So this is just for the installation services for all that work.
Dave?
Excuse me, I couldn't quite hear that. Was it 16 weeks you waited for CSU?
60. It was over a year.
That's preposterous.
It
Can you
was,
help
it
us
was pandemic related delays and things like that. So it was.
Oh.
Can
you
so
help
we've been
us-
patiently waiting.
Was material delays? I mean, it takes, I mean, help me understand that EVs are a big part of our transportation plan. It's energy efficiency issue says they're doing all they can to reduce emissions, carbon footprint. And here's an EV charging station with a 60-week delay.
The transformer, I think you answered your own question. I think there's so much push on EV charging and that kind of stuff that the demand for chargers has increased significantly, or for transformers has increased significantly.
Wow.
Yeah.
So are these, help us understand which of the levels chargers, there's a
Fair
kind of a
enough.
low, medium and high.
Yeah, so we're going to put in 4 mediums and 1 high. So it's actually a type 3, which is a DC fast charger. It'll be the only one west of I-25 along Highway 24 through there. So we're going to be a pretty big deal for a little while. And then there will be 4 type 2 chargers also along there. So the city will manage those within our parking department. And the DC charger has the capability of, charging a full electric vehicle in less than 30 minutes. So it's considered, it's a supercharger.
Typical cost, kilowatt hour charge.
So the way this will work, and now the city has to further define this, this is uncharted territory for us. But we'll figure out how much the kilowatt rate is for this per our payment through our meter to CSU. And then we will have the opportunity to mark it up accordingly for our administration and management and tracking of it. Because you have to have these all connected. It's a generalized system. It's not specific to Tesla. It's the J1722R. I don't know if I said that right, but it's a universal charger. And so that's these systems run on. And so I don't know about the rate just yet, but it's cost effective.
And then timing, then the 60 weeks, I presume, is now behind us. So.
Yeah, it was 60 weeks for the transformer. The chargers themselves are more like a 6 to 8 week delay for those. But CSU has their specifics and their requirements. They have to have a certain type and brand and model of transformer. And those were 60 weeks out.
Yeah, go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, since I work in semiconductor, we'll use, and actually have some familiarity with supply chain issues. And it's not just EV transformers, it's transformers across everything. I work, 60 weeks sounds like a lot. And that's where it's actually been going. It's actually been a year, maybe a year and a half actually to get supplies for electrical components, cables, wiring harnesses, and of course, transformers. A lot of components go into that, and it's been caused by the pandemic and the supply chain disruptions. It's going to take maybe another 3 years, 5 years before we start seeing some of this starting to settle out in the supply chain area.
Thank you. There's already 2 or 3 chargers in the parking lot already.
The ones we already have are down at the rec center at the pool. There's no EV chargers. This is for Hiawatha Gardens. There's no chargers there yet.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw one. I was at. Okay.
I hope you didn't see one.
Yeah. All
Wasn't
right,
authorized.
Yeah, very good. Okay. All right. Do I have any further discussion for Dole? I have a recommendation or like Dave approval. Approval. Okay. I have a second. Okay, Richard, we'll go with you. And any further discussion? All those in favor of approving Manitou Springs request, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, item number 7, City of Colorado Springs Transit.
Good afternoon, Line Rail Acting Transit Services Manager. What's in your packet is our regular monthly report with ridership. We do have a pretty packed agenda today, so I will not repeat and go through every single line details. But in summary, January and February this year, we're seeing more positive trend. We're looking at about 68% ridership compared to pre-COVID, compared to 48% same time last year. So similar to the financial report, not quite we're exactly where we want to be, but we are seeing positive trend here. In your packet is our transit highlight section with a few items. What did not make it in the packet is some recent events that I would like to cover. You might have seen some news media coverage about the downtown terminal restroom situation. So that's what I would like to update you with. And also we have our new planning supervisor here today that I would like to introduce him to you. And then he will cover our service change and the passenger rail station location study. So that's our plan for today. And I will cover the restroom. Last year, we have seen a trend and complaints, reported complaints about the restroom use at downtown terminal. We started looking at options late last year, and the situation got worse in January after a few homeless camp cleanup effort that we saw in early to mid-January. We did see an increased number of patrons at downtown terminal. We don't inquire your address, But we did see a lot of people sitting at downtown terminal after those homeless cleanup effort. We also received increased level of frustration and complaints from the bus drivers. So we started researching our options. So the request on the table was, can you close it all together and only have the bathrooms for bus driver use? We looked into FTA rules, the health department, building code. In the end, the conclusion was, yes, we could close the restrooms to the general public, but we are required, because it is considered a building structure, and we are required to provide bathroom access to our customers. So that's the research result. And we scheduled a deep clean prior to closing the bathrooms to the general public. That decision was made on late March 23rd, and we had to contract with a company to schedule that. So we scheduled the deep clean on April 1st. However, right after we made the decision to close it to the general public and deep clean, there was an incident Thursday, March 20th. In the evening, around 9 o'clock, we received a report that a security guard, while doing a routine check, he felt ill and was later transported to the hospital. He was later released, went home that day, but we did not have more information. Friday morning, we decided to close the men's bathroom where the incident happened and do more maintenance check and see what happened. We did not have report from the individual. He is a contracted employee, and to our knowledge, as of Friday, there was no drug test that was done on him, so he was released home. Friday morning, while we closed the restroom, we also discovered a burnt up, the exhaust fan wasn't working. So we also discovered burnt motor and belts, which could also cause odor and smell. So that was the information we received as of Friday. Monday morning, which after the cleaning, we reopened the bathrooms to the drivers and the passengers. Monday morning, we received a report from the contractor saying meth was, the symptoms appear to be more consistent with meth, but there is no evidence that is meth. So we had more conversations after this information, and we decided to close the restrooms immediately and contract with a qualified company to do testing, and we'll go from there. So that's pretty much the sequence of the events that you might have seen on TV, reading in the newspaper. Currently, our project manager is looking into different options, working with the qualified companies, because there are regulatory provisions that we have to follow, and not everyone can do it. So currently we are in conversations with 2 companies. The information actually came in just now before this meeting, changed slightly from yesterday. So far, we're looking at a preliminary level of assessment. We decided to do the testing for the 2 bathrooms, take samples from the waiting room as well as the 2 utility rooms. So we'll be testing both the surfaces and the HVAC system, which handles the airflow. We are looking at getting the test results back a few days once they do the testing, and we will make decision from there. We'll go from there.
Tony?
So the media coverage that I had seen said that there were complaints coming from the drivers about a lack of access to bathrooms in general. It was affecting their health and their welfare. So in the meantime, while you're waiting for all of these, what's being done to take care of them?
That's a great question. Thank you. Last year, once we became aware of the difficulties of using the bathrooms, in August, we started contracting process to increase our security guard presence. the security guard company was facing the same labor shortage as everybody else. So it took them a few months to increase the security guard coverage in one shift, but not the other shift. So eventually they were able to fully staff at 2 security guards in each shift in January. So we increased the security guard in November, then further increased it in November, in January in terms of the coverage. We also increased the janitorial hours to fully staff during all the hours were open. The security guard, one of the 2 guards is basically bathroom duties. So he would prop the door open slightly, monitor activities. It's still not foolproof to prevent everything, but it seemed better than what it was. We also, thanks to City Council, they opened the City Hall bathrooms for the drivers. We have been working with the staff on the other side, working out the hours, after hours access. So the bus drivers were able to use the City Hall bathrooms now, and they will be open for now. Yeah.
What about the drivers? What about the drivers whose routes don't go through the downtown terminal and providing them that access that Tony referred to? Is there, I mean, I guess porta potties won't work because they'll be in the same situation as downtown and be taken advantage of or damaged or whatever.
Thank you. That was also brought up, and City Council actually allocated budget a few years ago for us to rent a porta potty at Citadel. So we were renting that temporary solution for a few years until one was put on fire overnight. Then we had to find another contractor who was willing to work with us. So we provided another one. Later on, that one was torched as well. So we can't really find a contractor at this point who's willing to work with us. However, en route bathroom access is a nationwide transit challenge. The official responsibility is on the employer, meaning the contractor. We have been closely monitoring the situation, getting information from the current contractor, and they are getting recommended locations from the drivers along the route. And in our route planning, we do plan a few extra minutes here and there whenever we can to allow that access.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'm very pleased to introduce you our new planning supervisor, Dave Mentor. Some of you might already know Dave from a few years ago when he worked at Transit as our planning supervisor. After some time away, he has returned to MMT, and we're very excited to have him back.
Thank you. Thank you, Lan, and esteemed members of the advisory committee. I'm glad to be here, and I just wanted to share with you just a couple of things with respect to Mountain Metropolitan Transit. We have a proposed service changes coming up in the spring. They're minor changes, thank goodness, compared to what I understand Lan has been going through in the last year with all the COVID changes. These are very minor route improvements to Route 33, one of the great routes we have with great productivity. Seasonal service is going to be added back on Route 36 and 33. There's additional weekday service on the 4th of July that's been added. Route 2 has been restructured to go back to Centennial Boulevard, and minor time point adjustments are being made to Route 25 to increase on-time performance on that route. I think what may be already queued up, thank you very much, is the passenger rail station location study that was recently completed. And we just wanted to go over that recommendation with you here. So I have some slides from a presentation that was just done for the Front Range Passenger Rail meeting that was held in Castle Rock last Friday, I believe. And this is the presentation that was presented to that board there, the Front Range Passenger Rail board in Castle Rock. So in terms of background and process, as you have in your packet, the team that was looking at the station locations here in downtown Colorado Springs, looked at several different ideas and concepts when they were looking at the station location. They wanted to make sure that it was going to be working for the Amtrak Southwest Chief extension, which is one concept I think you're probably aware of for an Amtrak through car being routed from the long distance passenger train that goes from Chicago to Los Angeles with an extension for a through car here from Denver and the Front Range down to meet that line. We also wanted to consider mobility and connectivity for other regional plans in the city's plans, and looking at a technical analysis of just where a station might fit. The process took for the better part of a year, just completed. And in December, with its final recommendation, it included public engagement, class 1 railroads, with Burlington Northern and Santa Fe, including the Union Pacific, as well as Amtrak. And then they also had a guidance committee that was looking at several different locations throughout the process for the better part of the last year. The focused engagement included a couple of committees, a couple of committee meetings, over 700 responses gained from public input on the final recommendation, and several different feedback committees. It was a very well done committee process that was looking at several different locations, as you know, probably for the last year. There was initial screening that looked at approximately 11 sites. They narrowed it down to approximately 4 general locations in the downtown area, and then came up with one final recommendation at the end of their study. The criteria included rail operations, transit access, multimodal access, all these different things, and parcel availability, zoning, and all these things, activity centers that would be near the center, and pedestrian and vehicle access as part of the categories that they were looking at. As part of the station itself, the committee decided that they wanted to integrate passenger rail, of course, because it's the passenger rail station, but also some local transit connections, bicycling and walking. The transit station or the rail station that they're looking at should also include, they thought, a little bit of at least some parking, electric charging stations, car ride share locations, and scooters for alternative mode transportation access. And then some value added amenities like information, real-time information, ticketing, and public art. So in terms of the sites and the locations that were looked at, we initially came up, like I said, with 11 sites up as far as Woodman Road, several sites down by the depot, the existing rail depot near Colorado Avenue, and Cimarron Streets, and then as well as the Drake power plant location. A few sites on the old Santa Fe line that is a spur that connects up on the east side of downtown. You can see a couple of those dots over there where the old Santa Fe station was, and then down farther south towards Fort Carson as well, including Las Vegas Street. Based on the all the parameters that they looked at, they narrowed it down, as I say, to these 4 sites. The current depot was one location. They came up again and again as one good location, both on the east side of the tracks and the west side of the tracks. America the Beautiful Park, east side of the tracks and west side of the tracks, the Drake power plant location, and then a location right at the bridge that goes over Nevada Avenue on the south end of downtown were the 4 key spots. Again, they looked at station guidelines from Amtrak, the Front Range passenger rail design that's being planned by folks at CDOT and the Front Range passenger rail. They talked to the freight railroads again for their site design considerations. And they also had to, of course, because we're talking about operating passenger trains on existing freight rail tracks. So they wanted to make sure to include the consideration of the freight rail operations in the design consideration and the location. Based on all that, America the Beautiful Park came out, as you can see in the scoring chart here. That would be a location on the east or the west side in this consideration here. The depot on the east side was really close behind the existing depot. Not surprising because passenger trains used to stop there. And then also the Drake plant wasn't too far behind that. The idea behind the plan is that there is one site that was carried forward as the final recommendation, but it should be noted that these other sites are close behind should something fall through in the future, just so everybody knows that there are some backup ideas in this plan. Like I said, on the east side and the west side of the tracks is we're carried forward, America the Beautiful Park, Drake on the east and west side, as well as the Nevada Tejon area on the south end of downtown. The top ranked site avoids major impacts. It allows for future integration with the adjacent Drake site and had public support and support from the Front Range Passenger Rail District, CDOT, and the railroads. Like I said, they did some quick analysis, public engagement about the final location site that was recommended. They did get 700 responses, which they thought was pretty good. They did get some pretty good feedback on it. In general, there was 68% agreement or in strong support for the general site location at America the Beautiful Park. In terms of the design, there are lots of caveats here. The designs that are in your packet, I believe, and here are conceptual and could easily change. And no final agreements have been developed yet, but are being pursued going forward. And these are the locations that this is the final site design that was not the final site design. Forgive me. This is the preliminary site design for the location at America the Beautiful Park on the east side, just south of the current U.S. Olympic and Paratransit Museum. The concept shows the station on the east side of the tracks, where the public would approach the station, buy tickets, and then move under an underground pedestrian way to the platforms, which would be on the west side. At the moment, the Front Range Passenger Rail and the freight railroads prefer the alignment using the freight rail tracks for passenger on the west side 2 tracks in this area, because the existing freight rail tracks are being used occasionally and regularly by the freight railroad closer to the station. And it allows for a good, easy operation for Front Range Passenger Rail. It includes a parking garage, pickup and drop off area, as you can see, and at least one local bus stop for connecting local bus service at that point. There is a lower level parking underground area that's been defined, a small area at least, as part of the facility as well. And at the street level, there would be a plaza and potential other buildings. This is all very conceptual at this point. So this slide here is just shows just a little bit broader area with respect to the Drake Power Plant area, and that it relates to easy access for vehicles up and down Sierra Madre Street. Cimarron Street crosses, of course, the railroad tracks and goes to the west, and has a potential for connections to these adjacent development areas, potential areas to be developed. Next steps are the document release, which is ongoing right now, as this is part of that effort right here. Future funding determinations are still yet to be determined. There's ongoing discussions that are going to be happening with the Front Range Passenger Rail District, CDOT, and then the freight railroads as well. These are freight railroad tracks. They hold the cards in terms of operations. That's key and important to making sure to keep those communication lines open. There also is a need for future design, environmental clearances, and implementation and planning for this. So that is the end of the presentation. I'm imagining that this group would like to ask questions and maybe make comments about this in a formal way, right? About this plan. And I think that's the intent of our presentation here too. So please go ahead. Thank you.
I had the pleasure over the past couple of weeks to use a lot of passenger rail over on the East Coast. I took the Amtrak from Boston to New York and then a ton of stuff in New York, obviously. One of the things that is ubiquitous with passenger rail is the ability to actually get on other public transit when you get off. And your plan here showed one bus stop that's needed potentially. I assume if this starts to become more of a reality, there's going to be a lot more conversation around getting more access to actually get to the rest of the city from that one spot. Because otherwise there's no point in using passenger rail unless you're, taking Ubers from there on out to get to the rest of the city. So
that certainly is a comment that they received in this presentation last week in Castle Rock, from the Front Range Passenger Rail District representatives themselves as well. The initial thought here, and I'm sure, yes, to answer your question, yes. The initial thought here is that the connecting local bus service would be a frequent circulator that could be going back and forth from the station to other points downtown and back for a public circulation. Yeah. At the moment, that is the thought. If you all remember back in 2009, there was an initial site for Mountain Metro's transfer center to be located in this general area. Right. That was dismissed at the time by officials. And so we started looking at the other downtown transit station, of course, where it is the proposed location right now at Nevada and Pikes Peak. But that doesn't mean that there can't be more evaluation or more than just one bus, I would imagine, in the future. Yeah.
The reason I talk about this is if it comes to pass that this actually happens, I'd hate for it to just die out really quickly because no one actually uses it, because it's just too much of a hassle to try to get to it, get on it. Or if you're coming from Denver, coming from Fort Collins down to Colorado Springs, and you basically only have access to downtown when you're trying to maybe get to Briargate or something of the sort, without taking cabs. And at that point, you may as well just drive your own car from Denver. So.
That's a good point we've heard before. You're right.
Yeah, if I may, a couple of comments. Good presentation and a nice executive summary. I was fortunate enough to be a participant in this process as on one of the committees, and that very question about stations along the way from Colorado Springs, much like the Frex and the other bus stops were a monument at other places so that people could get on, was discussed and came about. But the focus of this study was a central terminal to be included, and those other things would be determined by the Front Range Passenger Rail Committee and District and whatever as that nears. I think if some of you have been following transportation for a while, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer, there was a whole CDOT study that showed that the highest probability of success of a rapid rail was between here and South Denver, connecting to the 70 corridor to go north from there. And so I think that those studies have shown that demand is there. Now it's coming up with a viable solution to support that demand. And then one comment I would just like to be on record of making was in the last paragraph. It's clear that this was a study to define the station, not to come up with a plan to build it. That the actual construction would be through the Front Rail Passenger Rail District, CDOT, and other stuff. But the part I wanted just to make anything, as the proponents of advancing passenger rail service. And I would like to say we should all be a proponent of passenger rail service, especially since the new ozone and the other requirements are coming along. Mass transit and cutting down the traffic on this corridor is a key to the success of that and all of our health. So regardless, but I just wanted to say that we should all be a proponent of of something. I'm not convinced, and I made it the comment. I don't know where they think how many people are going to come from La Junta to Colorado Springs. I just don't know how many people travel across country and get off in La Junta that want to come up here. They use that as a justification for this thing, and I don't get it. But it is a lot I don't get. But anyway, it was a good process. It was well conducted, and so thanks for giving a readout on it.
More to come on.
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
David.
Just to echo, I think the comments that were made earlier, completely agree with my colleague here about the location of this downtown. This board may recall a whole month ago, I offered some discussion in the future about what CDOT is now calling, I think, mobility centers. And these are planned by CDOT, as you probably know, up and down the Front Range corridor, I-25 corridor. I understand there are 4 of these actually under design going to construction quickly, all north of Denver. And as best I understand the concept, these mobility centers will do their best to have intermodality, alternate modalities, electric vehicle modalities. Everything kind of comes together at one point. The point I think I'm making it though is I think we're missing a golden opportunity. This is a great presentation. It's a great product at this point, but I think big picture wise, I think we're missing a golden opportunity. I kind of see 3 disconnected mobility centers arising here. We have the brilliant one that you've brought forward here. You've got, as my colleague mentioned, the one downtown that is disconnected from this one. And now on top of that, the CDOT's layering these grand mobility centers up and down I-25, which again seem disconnected from these, which seem disconnected from the downtown one. So to the extent to which we can look at really merging all 3 visions into one, it's CDOT's vision for the I-25 corridor. Again, there's nothing moving forward from what I understand on anything in Colorado Springs. It's all going north of Denver. The transit downtown one and this one, I think, will be far better off. I could not support, by the way, the current course of action to have 3 disconnected centers, but I don't know that I've got a better plan. And I don't know that strategically anyone has really looked to merge the 3 of those together. So that's just my shtick about wanting to look big picture, long term. And I hate to use the word strategery, but I think there's a piece of strategery that's missing here, or a golden opportunity that could pass us up if we're not careful.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Richard.
I want to make it perfectly clear. I am not particularly a fan of rail passenger service. There are probably only a few places in the country where passenger rail has ever been developed anywhere near the initial proposed cost of completing it, and very little accurate information has ever been developed about the fact that passenger rail does not pay for itself. It requires significant and sometimes highly significant support from other tax sources, such as the counties and cities along the way. And I heard a reference earlier to the demand has been shown between this area and Denver, and I would call those statements lies. Any such statement or any such indication that there is significant demand, that demand will not pay for the construction, much less, and even if it did that, which is impossible, that is going to take a lot of support of excess funds from the city, El Paso County, and I know of no I know of no board action in El Paso County supporting a continuation of this. Now, there's nothing wrong with this particular location study, except it did, there are hidden things and a few things that were said that imply that this group, our mass transit friends, who I do support their mass transit efforts, are talking about, I hope they are not going to be involved in the plans to process this rail, the passenger rail between Colorado Springs and Denver. It is going to be a complete disaster if that happens. And I do not think El Paso County will ever support it. I won't be around at that point, but I hope that the leadership there will be in opposition to it. And as long as I live, I will always join with any forces to oppose it. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just looking at the proposed platform location, are those new spurs where the train stops to load?
As far as I understand it, and forgive me, I don't have all, jump in somebody if you have more detail than this. The idea here that is that this platform is living inside the existing freight rail right of way. I'm not sure exactly what connections might need to be made to make that connection. For example, you can see 3 tracks are actually shown in darker shades, and that the platform is accessed by the rail vehicles themselves on either side for bidirectional service. And if occasion happens where a train needs to dwell at the same time at the station, that I believe is all in this existing freight rail right of way. And there could be a couple connections that have to be added back that were there before, but I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah.
Dave, I'll jump in and
Yeah,
support you,
please.
Gail Sertivant. So Dave's right that everything is intended to be contained within the existing rail right away or property in that location, but the rail configuration that would happen in the future associated with this is not depicted anywhere in this study. That would have to be something that would be looked at in greater detail with the implementation of the front range passenger rail. And then this is really a super high level concept of where it might work best within the city of Colorado Springs. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at it and what it might look like or have to change in the future.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, people have mentioned at the last meeting, they said, wherever you pick your station location ends up being a generator of a lot of development, or can easily be. If you think of downtown Denver, for example. So it's a city planning question as much as it is a transportation question, right? And a development question. Yeah.
Carlos.
Yeah, more of a question, and just to reiterate, I think Tony mentioned that, the Achilles heel of any project like this is going to be the last mile connectivity. You get off the train on the train platform, and now you have to get to your destination.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who uses our active transportation network a lot, I'm pretty excited to be able to this. I like to be able to just hop on my bike and be able to get, the Denver Tech Center, for example. I just wanted to understand in this final report, the consideration of station stops along the way. This particular location would be about, from my house up in Briargate, about 14 miles away. It takes about 14 miles to get down there. But this, the I-25 corridor, I'm just like 5 miles away from it, like from the Woodman, if there was one at Woodman and so forth. So I think that it would be beneficial that this final report should include these additional station stops. I think it says that this is going to be the place that we go. We're going to have multimodal access. You're going to preclude a lot of people who use our active transportation system on the northern reaches. And I'm talking as a technology worker. A lot of the workers here in Colorado are technology workers. They're in the math, the science, engineering fields. Denver Tech Center is a big draw. And if we want to get cars off the road, those are the commuters. That's our demographic that we want to get cars off the road. And they really live in the north part of Colorado Springs, if you study the demographics. So I'm just trying to understand, is this going to, I don't want to see Woodman and Monument and some of the parking rights there kind of be precluded on that. Precluded. I don't think that's what you're saying here, but I just want to understand it's kind of more of an emphasis. Is this report going to say, hey, here's our station, and it's going to be silent on any of the other platforms and stations on the northern reaches here? Or are we just going to, you know, and this goes back to the disconnected activity centers or transit centers. The reality is that, you know, I-25 is a long corridor. A lot of the workers like myself who would use something like this are really not in the downtown core. And I just wanted to see how this study will address it.
Yeah, if I may, that very subject came up multiple times during this study. And including being brought up by myself. And we were directed back to, that's not what we're here to do. We're here just to find a central station in the city of Colorado Springs. And so when you look at the old Santa Fe spur, you look at getting down south, my comment was, we're not addressing where our population growth is, and that's in the north part of the city. When we got to Woodman Road, again, you've got to transit into downtown and the other places to get to where tourists and stuff that would use the system go. And so we kept getting directed back. We're not on stops. We're not planning the overall thing. We're trying to find a location, not necessarily the only, but a location for this study. And that was the crux of this. So your point is taken. I brought it up several times myself, as did others, but we kept getting directed back to a location.
And I know some of the folks from the Front Range Passenger Rail, they're working on it at CDOT, actually some staff members. And the idea is that this is a starter system. It can't do everything. And every town along the way technically could have a bone in the fight of saying, well, we want a station. And we went to the point where you chase away the through rider.
Right.
And you slow down the trip quite so much. So at the moment, they're just envisioning one station in Colorado Springs, one station in Fort Collins, one in Boulder, one in downtown Denver, South Metro Denver because of the population, and Castle Rock at the moment. But at the moment, and then Pueblo, because they want the train to move for the through rider. So, but that doesn't mean there couldn't be discussions in the future. So,
Tony.
Right. And of course, having stations in each of these points doesn't preclude having just a platform where it makes a quick stop, hop on, keep going. I think it's interesting you said Boulder. Boulder's not on I-25.
the line is go.
Yeah,
You all know that right now. Yeah.
We always make adjustments for Boulder. That's okay.
Yeah. Rick, you had a question?
That was definitely the location that I preferred, but I also want to compliment us on our forward thought and planning. We put a bridge in from America the Beautiful Park over to the Olympic Center because we knew that it was going to be used in the future. That bridge that nobody wanted. So now,
So there you go.
you see, we thought forward.
Yes.
So more to come on all this, right? So.
Good comment,
Yeah.
Rick.
So
All
the
right.
idea, if they were here, the Front Range Passenger Rail folks would say, got to start somewhere. You know, can't plan everything, and there could be a lot more stations with a lot more tracks later, but they wanted to start somewhere. So, yeah.
Is there anything you need from us at this point? It's been a great.
Well-
I think you found overall with Richard maybe being a singular exception, you found good support for the concept. I think the devil's in the details. Is there anything you need from us at this point?
At the moment, we're shopping this plan around, and we're going to be talking to the Front Range Passenger Rail folks and the downtown folks. More to come in the future. So that may be where a lot more feedback is going to be coming.
Oh, you'll get some, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You ask and you shall receive. All right. Thank you, Dave.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I do have one transit related question before we move on.
Please,
away from
Dave.
Transit, and this may be more for Lynn or someone else on the operations side of transit. Again, and many of my colleagues here may know that once a month I complain about RTD. This month is no exception. I'm a huge supporter of transit in general. I would just like to share. I had a chance to again use the A line, which is the heavy rail, from the 40th and Gateway Station to DIA. It's a great connection and it's half the price to park there. And as I was parking there last week, I noticed that they have a terrible vandalism problem there in not just the 40th and Gateway, but I actually sent a letter to I know the chairman of RTD's board pretty well. So I sent him a note asking for an investigation or at least an understanding what's going on. My question, I guess, Lynn, for you is, hopefully the answer is no. Are we having a similar spike in vandalism at our park and rides that we should be aware of? My concern for the RTD system, as I shared with the chair, was it really erodes confidence in transit riders, people like us who would do a park and ride when you leave your vehicle behind. And as I was leaving to get on the train in Denver last Monday, I see a lady crying her eyes out and all of her glass is busted out of her SUV as I'm racing to catch my train to make my flight. And that just so impressed me there that as I was walking quickly, then I noticed a sign in another window of a car. Please do not break my window glass out. This is my only source of income. This is the only way I have to get to work. Please break out somebody else's window glass, not mine. And hers was spared, but this one was not. Can you talk about security in our park and ride locations and confidence in the system?
Sure. I wish the answer is no, we don't have the problem, but yes, we do. Our riders and our system is very different than Denver RTDs. They have the train service, they have more commuter services, they have more of the choice riders. And what we have here, we have a lot of the riders who don't really park their vehicles at a park and ride, then hop on the bus.
Okay.
So what we see more is people getting on the bus and that's their only way. And there are people using bikes. However, especially at Citadel, yes, we have experienced vandalism. We had many efforts of our ticket vending machine that you can just buy a bus pass from the machine, put cash, credit card in. We have seen constant damages. We had, again, delays in getting parts, getting them fixed. And we saw people stealing, I don't know how they drilled it in, but they were able to take the whole box and away. And we got to the point that we could not continue to leave the ticket vending machines at Citadel. So fortunately, we have a mobile ticketing project that we are moving towards more mobile and electronic. But that, yes, we have observed these. We also, again, the Citadel bathroom situation is another example. What we have been trying to do is to include some security presence in our budget. We have been working with the police department trying to find if there is an option, but they were facing in the last couple of years, they were facing staff shortages as well as the general labor market. So we will continue to pursue that option. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I make a comment?
Yes, is that Ann?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead, Ann.
I don't know if you can see me or if you're still seeing the pictures on my desk.
I see the pictures on your desk, but we can hear you.
Oh, good. I'm sorry. I did a mistake. I would just like to agree on two things. I'm concerned about the vandalism because my sister in Green Mountain Falls 2 months ago drove up to get on the RT, whatever it's called, they're on I-25, to go into the Union Station and catch a train to see her son in Grand Junction. She was there for a week. She came back, someone had vandalized her car, tried to break into it, and damaged the handles and so on. It cost her $500 to get it repaired. And sometimes those places are kind of lonely too. If you get back late at night, that can be dangerous. The other thing I would like to agree with Carlos and some others and Richard, that even though I know what you're saying is we have to stay in our lane regarding this study. It's not bigger than just the central station. But I think that's foolish. I think we should be trying, if we're trying to get people onto little trains and so forth to get where they're going. I like the idea of the platforms and have spur rails that are at least planned for and thought about, so that you can get people on and off quickly. They don't have to have a ticket station there, but they can stop just like they used to in the old days. Throw the meal off, put a passenger on, and go on. So that's just my 2 cents worth. I won't vote against this, but I'm just a little bit more concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, thanks, Lan. Appreciate it. All right, let's move on, please. Item 7B, Board Policy 30 revision. This was the Board Policy 30 was the as your memo says, instead of modifying policy 12, decided to update policy 30. For the newer members, this is for very large projects where change orders can be quite significant in size. And the typical model has been you come forward with that project for a request to waive the $25,000 and get to the bigger amounts. And the board has suggested a tiered system. So Rick, you want to, Gail, you want to take this one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we brought this memo forward to you last month. And originally we had showed the only difference really from what we were presenting today is from what we talked about last month was that tier 3 area. At tier 3, we had originally been showing $400,000. We had a lot of discussion about what that meant and about that threshold and the concerns you had and about not having oversight. And we thought that was a really valid discussion. And we had even proposed verbally during that meeting that we would make a reduction into that area. For a couple of the CAC members that are new, I'll just review that the thresholds that are set in these tiers are based on a theoretical percentage or a percentage based on a theoretical contract value to really set them to give them the right order of magnitude. So for tier 1, we looked at that threshold running between 1.25 million to 5 million, and 2% of $5 million happens to be that $100,000, which is really the threshold we already were looking at with that policy 12. We applied that again to that next tier, looking at the contract range between 5 million and 10 million, and left that at 2% of the $10 million project. And then on tier 3, we based on the discussion we had last month, we reduced that to 1.5% of a $20 million contract. Because I think we mentioned previously, those were here, we had talked about having potentially a 4th tier, and tier 3 really was meant to capture a lot of our construction contracts, which would run in that range between 10 million and $20 million. So 1.5% of $20 million of that upper threshold is 300,000. And even before we came to the CAC, we really thought we were getting at the upper limit of where it made sense for that threshold. So we really eliminated tier 4, left tier 3. So anything over $10 million, that threshold would now be proposed at a $300,000 limit.
And the board supported that during the board meeting last month, just so you know, it was a big discussion with the board.
Yeah, that's correct. And I'd be happy to go back and review some of the other information if we need to, particularly since we have so many CAC members, but that's really just an update from where we were last month, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I got the impression that with those suggested and discussed changes, that the board would support this recommendation as presented to us today for a change. So go ahead, Carlos.
Sorry, I wasn't here last month, but here I am, of course. I'm just using the words here based on the scale. I was reading this here and I was a little confused on that. What do you mean by scale? Maybe that was discussed. Is that a synonym for large amount? if I change orders, change
Carlos,
order
can you
limits
point me
based
to
on the scale.
paragraph that you're talking about?
Well, it was in the paragraph, there's some quotes here, and then, by the way, it's out of context. This question here, it says change order limits based on the scale of the initial contract value.
Well,
If we took
that's-
out the word scale, would that change the meaning in any significant way? Scale has a particular meaning in my industry in computer software. I just don't know if it's a customary term in construction.
Well, what we got asked by the board was a sliding scale. So I guess that's maybe why I honed in on that language.
Okay.
In the first paragraph. If
It's the second
in
sentence.
the second paragraph,
Second sentence.
we could change scale to range.
Or sliding scale, you said sliding scale.
Sliding scale is what the board asked for, and that's what's included in the first paragraph. The second paragraph just says, it says scale of the initial contract value. I would be happy to change scale to range. Because really, when you look at the table that we're referring to, it gives a dollar range that change order value is applicable to.
Yeah, I just didn't want to change the meaning if your intent was sliding scale or range. Scale usually implies size, for example. You know, or it has a different meaning. It could have a different meaning without any kind of qualifier. So if you change it to based on the range of the initial contract value, the range of the initial contract value, the change order value, would it clarify that, make it more clear? To me, I was confused by that word scale. Again, it has connotations in other fields. Maybe everybody else, maybe I'm the only one who got, if I'm the only one who's confused by that, then just ignore it. But you know, I'm getting your input. It's more of a question.
I would actually, I am an engineer. Let's back up. Okay. So English is, challenging, but I believe it's really a range and synonym. The way it's used in this is probably synonyms. So I don't know that it makes a difference either way, particularly when it's asking you to refer to the table down below. But I will take direction based on the recommendations of the CAC.
If he's the only one confused by it, then let's just leave it.
And I looked it up just to make sure.
All right. The important thing is there's a board understanding because they're the ones that's going to make the decision. So, all right. Okay. So is this one is a recommendation. So do I hear a motion to carry this revised recommendation to the board? Tony? Let's have a second.
Larry Tobias, second.
Larry Tobias, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you all. All right, item 7C, the monthly change order reports. They're information only. Does anyone see anything in there you got questions about? Just to point out, by the way, under that sliding contract range, this would be where your change orders. So if you, as you scan this, if you see something in this information that raises your ire or because of a dollar amount, something, this would be the point during our meetings to bring up and just get clarification on it. The board was questioned that they may not see it, and we had to remind them that this is an information only item that has all change orders on it. So just wanted to remind everybody of that. Any problems with El Paso County's change orders log? Not seeing anyone. Okay, very good. Thank you. 8A, report of recent board actions. Rick?
The memo covers the highlights of the board. Are there any questions on my memo? Yes, sir.
What does it mean, approved on a split vote of 4.5 to 3.5? How do you get a half vote?
An interesting answer.
I can't wait.
When Calhan expressed an interest in joining this will take a couple minutes. The board, several of the board members, particularly the City of Colorado Springs and El Paso County Board directors, felt that giving Calhan a full vote in addition to Manitou Springs, Rama, and Green Mountain Falls, Manitou, Rama, and Green Mountain Falls. That the smaller entities total votes, if Callahan got a full vote, in addition to Manitou having a full vote and Green Mountain Falls having a full vote and Rama having a full vote, those four of the smaller were eroding the voting weight on the board of the 3 city and 3 county directors. So the negotiated condition of Callahan joining was that the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 smaller entities, however many we added, had to split the existing 3 votes. So with Callahan joining, 4 into 3 yields 0.75 for each of the smaller entities.
Trust me, there were calculators that came out.
So yes.
Yeah, that was, yeah, we had to take a pause and somebody had to get their phone out and do the calculator thing. We're like, what is it? Got it. Okay.
And Tony, the attorney for the board reviewed it and also calculated the voting to come up with that number. And she agreed with it.
Yep, the attorney and I each did the math to double check each other and no, but when you're going around the table and each one is saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, you have to quick see who.
You're only worth 3/4.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So there was 1.5 hands. Yeah. No, we got. All right. Item 8B. Mr. Rick.
Okay, this topic has been discussed by the CAC a couple of months. It is not time sensitive. It can wait another month or two. At the board meeting, Green Mountain Falls Mayor Todd Dixon suggested a different definition in the continuum of time and the continuum of process as we're closing out the A-list projects of PPRTA 2. He proposed a different point in the process of closing out than is in the draft. And I asked him to send me an email this morning so that we had his exact proposal in front of everybody. So I've handed that out to everybody. I also emailed it to the CAC this morning when I received it from Mayor Dixon. Since that is significantly different in the steps of the process of closing out the A-list project and a significant difference in the timeline, the city staff and county staff have requested a postponement of this today for further review and research and discussion. So that's the recommendation today. Open for discussion if you want to have some discussion, but the city and county staff have asked for this to be postponed for 2 months to the June CAC and board cycle.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Richard.
I endorse the recommendations of our staffs of the city of Colorado Springs and the El Paso County. And I would further think from the viewpoint of the city, they just had an election for their council members, and that's another reason to defer. Thank you.
I'm very pleased that you're going to wait. Also, this is Ann.
Okay, Ann, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, the impact of this has a greater risk for the smaller communities in that they as we get into, and it's really only applicable in the final year of the 10-year period. So we go across this issue. But it really becomes more critical because they don't have the funding flexibility to line item transfer once you've declared a project fully funded and you've used all of your allocation for that year. You don't have any more flexibility. Whereas the larger entities may have program funds or other projects that they can scale for later. And it also impacts the process by which the reserve funds are allocated and who might get them and who might need them as we start into that last year and people start declaring they want to finish a project. And I've said it, and in my opinion, when we have money, I don't think it's fair to someone to de-scope a project just because they don't have money when we've got money in the reserves or otherwise. And this is a regional program. We should be looking at the benefit for the region. And therefore we should try to help people that don't have that flexibility. So this really becomes critical in the last year. So give it some thought, read through the notes, and I'll take Richard's recommendation and Ann's second to defer this to June and let the county and the city give us some feedback on your impacts and ideas. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
And this may be just something for the city and county as you're discussing this and trying to figure it out. The first proposal here of changing the definition of completely funded from shovel ready to contract signed. To me, on first reading, looks like it's a great idea, but please give us a reason why or why not when you're ready to talk about it.
Well, I just reminded, that was not the recommendation. The recommendation is provided with red lines in your packet, and what is proposed. Mayor, it was Dixon, correct? Mayor Dixon actually suggested not going with anything that we had recommended, and they're using shovel ready. There's since been email conversations that it has been shared about changing that definition. So he wants to go a completely different direction than what was recommended by the city and county. So we're hoping that we can have it worked out by June and come back and talk with you, but we definitely need some time and also keeping in mind the election night is an important aspect for, at least for the city.
Okay. All right, Eddie, let's move on to item.
You need to get a vote on it.
Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor of deferring this to June, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not hearing any, motion carries. Thank you. Let's go to 8C, revision to board policy 4. Rick.
As everyone is aware, Board Chair Wayne Williams, a Colorado Springs City Council member, did not run for re-election as a city council member. He's running to be the mayor, and he's now apparently in a runoff for the mayor's seat. But once he no longer is a Colorado Springs City Council member, which is going to be in the morning of April 18, if he's not a council member, he's not on the PPRTA board. And he's not the PPRTA board chair instantly at 10 a.m. on the 18th. So we're missing a city director, we're missing a chair. And the IGA requires that the chair has to be from either the city or the county, and they alternate, and that this year the PPRTA board chair has to be a city director. So the two options were to ask the board next Wednesday to pick an interim chair, or which is not necessary because the vice chair, County Commissioner Carrie Geithner, can chair the meetings. But the hiccup, the speed bump, is that board policy 4 says that both the chair and vice chair have to review the check register, which is the list of all the checks that we send to them every 2 weeks. And there are 2 check runs, AP runs, in the time when Wayne is not the chair from April 18 until we get a new third city council director on May 10, April 18 to May 10, 2 check runs. And the board policy says that both the chair and vice chair have to review those, and we won't have a chair. So the workaround is to amend board policy 4 to allow a voluntary city director to be the interim reviewer of the check register, which there will be 2 during that time period. So that's what's before you is a revision to board policy 4 so that either Yolanda Avila or Randy Helms can be the second reviewer of the check register of the 2 check registers in that time period. Questions?
What was the problem with just getting an interim person from the city?
I didn't feel that it would, without having a third city director, I didn't feel like putting the board in a box,
Okay.
and that this was the lesser of the workarounds.
It should go away by the May board meeting.
Right.
This is Cindy, and I think you always have to have a backup, because what if not just this issue, but if one of them was sick or out? So I'd like to make the motion to approve this policy number 4.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Ed Dill, second.
Jim, I'm online and I have a couple questions.
Okay, Brandy, go ahead.
Just reading through it, and Rick this may be defined somewhere else. What is the definition of an applicable director?
Give me a second to find that word, and
It's at the bottom. It's at the very last line of that big paragraph. Sending an email to both of the other applicable directors. I just didn't know if applicable was defined.
that would be in that particular year, or this particular year, the applicable directors would be the city directors, the other 2 city directors. Next year, that would be the applicable directors would be the county directors.
Is that defined, or is that just us agreeing what applicable means? How about maybe sitting directors or appointed directors? I'm assuming you're implying those that are actually on the board and not alternates, correct?
Yes, I think elsewhere it says alternates cannot be.
Right, I saw that, but
Yeah, this wording came from Jennifer Ivey, the board attorney, so I'll yield to her, and I personally think it's okay.
okay. And then just as a question, the 3rd paragraph says, after an email approval is received, is that the email approval for those items over $50,000, or is there a separate email that's sent for items under $50,000?
The email and second paragraph, after an email approval or signature on the check register. So it's email approval of the check register or signature on the check register, then the under $50,000 checks, blah, blah, blah.
Right. So my question is just a process question. You guys don't route those invoices under $50,000 until those over $50,000 have been authorized for payment?
It's sort of simultaneous.
Checks.
Upon approval, email approval or the signature of the chair and vice chair on the check register, then the unders can be released. The overs have to be personally signed by either the chair or vice chair.
Right. Yeah, mine's just a process question. You guys wait for both.
That's either simultaneous or after. The overs are either simultaneous or after.
Okay. And the unders look like they are as well. That's
Yeah.
how it's written. And that's why I'm just asking if it's meant to be written that way, or if it was meant to be written such that it's those over 50,000.
I'm not understanding the question.
So
Please.
your third paragraph says that after they send an email authorizing those expenditures over $50,000 is at the time that they pay those invoices under $50,000. I'm just asking if it's meant to say under 50,000 or is it meant to say over 50,000?
Isn't the check register every single check under and over? It's just different of if it's signed with a stamp versus a manual sign, right?
Yeah, the unders can be one, either the chair or vice chair stamp and my signature. The overs have to be a live signature of either the chair or the vice chair. And the second signature can either be the other chair of the two or me, board secretary.
Okay, but essentially it all happens simultaneously. You do this for over and under all at the same time.
Yes.
That was my only question. Thank you.
One more question.
Yes, sir, Carlos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This director appointed by Colorado Springs City Council, is that in a noticed open public meeting before City Council that they would appoint this director? Or is this email just go out to, hey, who's available, volunteer? And they're just kind of passing, the hat around. What's this process of getting this director appointed by Colorado Springs Council?
It's their local process. So it's however they want to do it. I just recognize it as official when I get a letter or an email from somebody of authority saying that the council or the council president, again, their process. Whenever I get an email from somebody of authority saying Council Member Jones is now your third director.
But it's discussed in an open council meeting.
My recollection is that, yes, they do appoint the directors to the PPRTA and it's a consent item on the calendar. And so it is public noticed. It's a consent item because, hey, we're like I was appointed in the C tab, but that was on a noticed meeting. But it was, I believe it could be a consent item or it was actually discussed as an agenda item. I'm just wondering, you're right, it is probably not your purview, but you may want to, I'm okay with approving it this way or doing this, but if there's this idea that we can expedite a check signing by just sending an email to somebody out there in City Council, I think there's a little bit more formality that's involved with appointing a director from the City Council. And so it may not be as instantaneous as you want. You may actually have to wait to another City Council meeting to have them appoint a director. This would be a question for Jennifer to understand what that process is from City Council. It just sounds like an email is just going out as, hey, who's available? And I don't think that's what's intended, right?
Well, I think an email is intended to send to Randy Helms and Yolanda Avila asking for a volunteer for this 20-day interim period.
Oh, okay, appointed, so they would be approval by one other directors appointed by the same member of government. All right, that makes more sense. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you all. So do we have a recommendation for approval of policy 4? We've already done that. Cindy did. Okay. And Rick Hoover will second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Not hearing one. Okay, great. Thank you very much. PPRTA item 8D RTA annual report. Hope you've had a chance to look at it. And I have any discussion on it? Good. Oh, I'm sorry.
Great product, fabulous as always. Couldn't have asked for more. It exceeded my wildest expectations. And
But
I was wondering when it gets posted live. I know it's not on the website now. This thing can hardly wait. We ought to get this out soon as possible, but it's not there now. Help me understand what's your timing for release
It,
of this great document.
if you recommend approval with or without revisions, it goes to the board in their board packet tomorrow and they approve it next Wednesday and then it goes on the website Thursday
Good answer.
of next week.
I can support that. Thank you.
All right, somebody else. Yes, sir.
On page 40, the middle of the page has a typo for it's got like $1 billion or something dollars where there's probably an extra number in there.
The 4489.
Right, 4489,
What
Okay.
page is that?
page 40.
40.
1,307,4489.3.
Good, good eagle eye. I've read this, 6 times, but I missed that. So what, Josh, what number should it be? Which digit comes out?
Page 40 under crack seal, the first sentence in crack seal.
Oh.
We take out a 4.
I may have to get you an update. I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Okay, page 40, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Great eagle eye.
Tomorrow, Josh,
Yeah.
by 10 o'clock tomorrow.
All right, any other
This-
questions or comments?
This went through the subcommittee, the Public Outreach Subcommittee. Rick Hoover had 3 changes. We've made those 3. Rick, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna ask, if we need to approve that one I had, and you just clearly answered it. Thank you.
Yeah, the north arrow is on the latest version and we've swapped the paragraphs. And what was the third one?
The county maps.
Oh, yeah, the revised county maps and pictures with a better clarity. Yeah, we've received all those.
Any other comments or questions? Do I have a motion to recommend approval of our annual report to the board? Rick, thank you. Second,
Do we need to clarify that with the?
Revision of the
changes,
typo on
revisions
page 40.
oh, yeah, you want to, with the revision of the typo on page 40. Okay, and Tony, you'll second. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I would just like to add that for the newer people, along with the quarterly reports that come out from the member governments on the status of their projects. This is a great way to advertise our success to the citizens in your constituency through your social media and otherwise. It's a great report, a lot of work, and this my experience has been when people in my sphere up in the northwest side are whining about roads. And I tell them about the $120 million we spend per year over, and I send them to this report. They usually shut up and some of them say, thank you. So, so I would encourage you to pass it around as Dave was exactly getting out to the public. So anyway, yes, sir, Rick.
I just want to make another comment. I put these out at the King Supers out there at Mark Chapel, and I actually got the approval, permission from the floor managers to put it on their little stand where they put their sales things. And I put up 3 or 4 every time I go into shop, and they're always gone. So they're not being thrown away because the store staff is supporting us on this. But I happened to, there is a gentleman out there collecting for the vets, the disabled vets. And I handed him one because he was sitting there all day. He has not one time not thanked me for giving him one of those things. He said that was information he had no idea existed and how much he appreciated what we do. So, one little accident means a lot to us. It can mean a lot to a lot of people.
Yep. Great. Thank you for that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Quick, and it's forgive my ignorance for being relatively new on this group, but I mean, do we have a way to actually market this? This is available, via the board, via a press release or something along those lines as well?
Yes, there'll be a press release. There'll be ads in 9 newspapers directing people to the website. And then I usually print about 2,000 copies and I take them around to city halls, county buildings, libraries, et cetera, chambers of commerce.
And there's always some here that you can grab and carry to your favorite, like Rick said, to the grocery store or wherever. So. Good comment. Thank you. All right, item 8E is information. It's Rick's staff report where people telling me we've completed this and he rides around and checks to make sure they did before he approves the check and the invoice. So again, just trying to take care of the public's keep their trust. So. All right, item for agenda topics for next meeting. Any comments, requests for anything special next meeting? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, Lanrell, Gail, first of all, she wants to apologize for leaving early. She's got out of town consultants waiting in her office. She did remind me we had a request from Dave, Mr. Solonok there, from a couple months ago about a presentation. Basically the traffic engineering, queue jumper, signal prioritization. So she would like, and I would like to know, so if PAC would be interested in seeing that presentation next month.
Okay. Just get that to Rick and we'll make it happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And thank you also. Just a brief, high-level conceptual overview to give my colleagues some level of understanding as to the benefit, the value, and some of the terms in the parlance these days. What's new and innovative in transit?
Yes. Todd Frisbee, the traffic engineer, will be here.
Okay.
Next
Thank
month.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone have any communications you want to share with the group about anything going on? Rallies or somebody having a cake party, you know, whatever. But anyway. All right. So no communications. Do I have a motion to adjourn? So move. I'll second it. Where a move. Thank you all for your time and participation.